It was a lot of fun to come into this area not knowing anything about the system and to discover by dialing and listening exactly how the whole network works. We've already seen that there's a tandem on 6 and that various codes through the tandem reach various offices. Well, we know that 2-1 by way of the tandem is the code for the 491 office in Mamie. Let's try some of the other codes. We'll drop the director, dial 6 to get the tandem, and then we'll see what's on 2-2. What's cool about this call is you can clearly hear the two carrier systems we've been talking about back to back. The first link to the tandem is 3700 controlled carrier and has its distinctive sound. Then when I dial the 2-2 for the office, you can hear this 2600 controlled carrier coming on very clearly.
Out is not in service at this time. Please check your directory or call directory assistance. This is recording from 297, Honeywood, North Carolina. Thank you. The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
That was 297, Piney Woods, North Carolina. It helps to have a local phone book sometimes when the recordings are unintelligible or only mention just the town or just the prefix. So 297's on 2-2. Let's see what's on 2-3.
The number you have dialed is not in service at this time. Please check your directory or call directory assistance. This is a recording from 264, Woodville, North Carolina. Thank you. The number you have dialed is not in service at this time. Please check your directory or call directory assistance. This is a recording from 264, Woodville, North Carolina. Thank you.
Okay, so Woodville is on 2-3. Let's go ahead and see what's on 2-4. I'll drop the director, dial 6 for tandem, 2-4 to get into whatever's there, and then hopefully the digit 1 will give us a vacant level recording. Well, that happens sometimes. This office doesn't have a vacant level recording, so there's a piece of the jigsaw puzzle that isn't filled in yet. The next two calls to Hertford 426, an office which is right down the road from here, go over an unusual type of trunk. According to someone who worked in the company, there were only two types of trunks between Edenton and Hertford, and both were on carrier. This doesn't sound like carrier to me, and the two types of carrier he spoke of, O carrier and N1 carrier, are very familiar to me, so I can only conclude that there was something unusual about this particular system. For one thing, the frequency response on these trunks is phenomenal and does not seem to roll off at 3600 Hertz the way N1 carrier usually does. So I'll refer to this as the mystery trunk. But if you want to know what a long individual cable pair trunk or a wire trunk sounds like in other places, it sounds like this, except that the frequency response is not as good as this. This has a lot more highs, and you'll notice a lot of cool little metallic sounds on this trunk, which generally, again, are associated with long wires, not carrier. So let's call Hertford without using the director. We will drop the director and then dial 92. That'll put us into the Hertford direct trunk. Then we'll dial 8111, which is a non-working number.
This is a recording announcement from Hertford, North Carolina. The number you have dialed has been changed or disconnected. Please check your directory or call directory assistance. Thank you.
Yeah, I let the recorder run a while so that you could get the sound of the trunk there. So now we've heard three different types of interoffice trunks, basically. The 3700 controlled carrier, the 2600 controlled carrier, and these last two calls went over the mystery trunk. This next call goes over yet another kind of interoffice trunk, and we'll be dialing a number in the 221 office, which is in a town called Welsh. You may be able to tell by the sound of that that is going through on T-carrier, a digital transmission system that is basically the backbone of the modern telephone network. This direct T-carrier trunk is on the 5 level in the local switching train. So when we dial 2214, a valid 1000 group in that office, the director picks up and dials a 5 to get the 221 direct trunk, which is T, and then 4 for that 1000 group. It's no secret that I don't like T-carrier. So let's route the call our own way. I mean, why just pick up the phone and dial normally when you can send the call any way you like? We'll drop the director, dial a 6 for the Elizabeth City tandem, which will put us on a nice analog carrier trunk with 2600 control. And then we'll dial 27, which is the code for the Welsh office through Elizabeth City. When we dial 27, we'll get yet another 2600 controlled analog trunk. So we now have two of those back to back. Then we'll dial the last 4 digits, 4199. And as the supervision test progresses, you'll notice that every time it hangs up, we hear cheep cheep. I don't know about you, but I like routing it that way better. 511 is a test code which goes to a dial speed checker test. It's amazing how all the independents seem to have one of these. Basically, the dial speed test gives you a tone, and then you dial a 0, and then if your 0 is too slow, it'll beep once. If it's the right speed, it'll beep twice, and if it's too fast, it'll beep 3 times. The dial speed test is centralized. It's in Elizabeth City. So when we dial 511 from here, the director dials 6 for tandem and then 15 to get the dial speed test. It was necessary to manually slow down the dial as it was turning to get the single tone and the double tone on that. In Elizabeth City itself, there are two prefixes, 335 and 338, and they are on 5 and 8, respectively, of the tandem. Here's a ringing number in 338 reached by dropping the director and then dialing 6 for tandem, 8 for 338, and 4 digits. And now here's a 338 busy number dialed normally. When you try to dial 1 plus a long distance number, it kind of doesn't work when you're calling from a coin phone. Here's an example of trying to do that. That is recognizable as an Elizabeth City reorder, and that's what happens when you try to dial 1 from a coin phone. It just kind of ends up getting you to that reorder one way or another. Now let's demonstrate getting around the toll restriction by picking up the phone, giving a nice long flash, and the flash effectively drops the director out and dials a 1, and then dialing the long distance call.
Your number, please.
482-2771 is what was said here.
Thank you.
number you have reached, LY39883, has been changed. The new number is area code 212-877-5352 in New York City. Please make a note of it. LY39883 has been changed. The new number is area code 212-877-5352 in New York City. If you need assistance, you may stay on the line, and an operator will answer.
The 435 office in Moyock, North Carolina, is the office on 2-4 on the Elizabeth City tandem. That's where we were getting a reorder before, trying to find out what 2-4 was. Well, it's this office, 435. On this next call, I'm going to pick up the phone and dial 4352. That will be enough to set up the call. Then I'll sit there and wait until the director times out. It will just drop us onto the trunk, and from there I'll dial things which go to a reorder. After that, I'll reset the trunk with a long flash, and then dial something which goes to the local recording, then reset again, and get a busy signal and a ring.
This is a recorded announcement from Moyock, North Carolina. The number you have dialed has been changed or disconnected. Please check your directory or call directory assistance 919-435.
Dang, listen to that thing. The way it hisses along with the sound like that. I mean, the ring is just ringing, but then the carrier system's going every time there's a sound. Gives the phone call a very odd ambience. And I remember speaking on those kind of connections because in the Bell system, the 3700 controlled carrier sounded just like this. We used to have these kind of connections between my home in Long Island and New York City. And it was odd. Had a weird, eerie feeling to talk on a connection like that. So here's what's coming up in the next segment. Stacking. Stacking is a phone freak practice of making a phone call go back and forth between many, many offices, resulting in a phone call that uses so many links that it sounds like you're calling through a long, long tunnel. And you hear the other end way down in the distance. And then the supervision has to come back through all those many links, and instead of clunk, cheep, you'll hear things like clunk, cheep, like that. You just have to hear it. It's in the next segment, and the nice thing is you can stack here without using any blue box or anything like that, just by dialing interesting codes. Coming up.